Hello, everybody. Casey here. Welcome back to the Chick Chat Collective. I am very excited to interview today Catherine Lao. She is a mindset coach and a yoga teacher who hosts a membership-based community, which is committed to personal growth through the practices of yoga and inner shadow exploration. And so we are going to dive into that more with her. What does that mean? Why she got into this, what made her get started. And she's going to share her story with you guys. And so I'm just really, really grateful that she's here. Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks, Casey. Thanks so much for having me on. Casey and I were just having a chat about the mission of Chick Chat, and I love your mission. I'm really drawn to it. This idea of sharing stories so that we feel like we're not alone, especially women coming together and sharing the experiences that they've had. And this is something that I'm really drawn to. The work that I do with inner shadow exploration, if you're not familiar with it, the inner shadow is parts of ourselves that we don't accept or don't like or have abandoned a long time ago. And it's really governed by the society that we live in, the family unit that we live in, the community that we live in, of what we think is okay and acceptable and what we think isn't. Because as children, our drive is to really belong and feel loved and a part of something. And our shadows are created from abandoning the parts of us that we don't think are loved, or abandoning the parts of us that we think are going to outcast us from being connected to a certain community. So this is a topic that I really love, I'm really excited about. And like all gifts and like all interests, they usually come from our deepest wounds, right? Things that happen to us when we're younger, and it determines our life path and what we get interested in. For me, that meant very early on in my life, my mother had ALS, so Lou Gehrig's disease. She was diagnosed when I was, an infant, and she passed away when I was 7. And I have an older brother who's about 19 months older than I am. And my father was just an old school Filipino guy that comes from a time where women kind of raised the children and were a part of that. So I grew up very independent in my childhood. My mother was, for most of my memory, a quadriplegic. And eventually, when she passed away, my father left us and sent my brother and I to live with extended family members in San Francisco. We were in Vegas at the time. And so this was of a time, so this was 81 is when my mother passed away. So my mother died, my father left us, we gave up our house, our family, everything that we knew to go live in this crazy town that San Francisco was at that time. It was very overwhelming. Yeah. And this was of a time where people didn't really prepare children or talk to children about what was going on. It was kind of that idea of like, they're kids, they don't really know, they'll figure it out and they'll get through it. You can relate to that. 100%, right? And so there was no preparation for what was happening. And so I basically went into a state of shock. Total survival mode. And the way that happened for me was kind of freezing and going inward, where like my brother, his was more active. It was more outward in terms of like anger and acting out in certain ways. So we moved in with this new family, and the messaging that I got from the new family, although they were very loving, it was a huge thing for them to bring in, my brother and I. I'm so forever grateful for that. And they gave us a really safe place in terms of, we had private school education. We lived in a beautiful Victorian. We had a lot of things that were available to us at this time, coming from a family where my mother was sick and we were really poor. Yeah. So all of a sudden these financial things were available to us, but there was this messaging of, don't be sad, you should be grateful. Why are you acting out? You should be grateful. So it felt like the process that what I was going through was being told to me that it was not okay to go through that process.
Right.
And you're a young child, so you are trying to please. I was really scared of being sent to an orphanage. I was really scared about my safety and my security in this family. And so I took that messaging, whether they meant to give me that messaging or not, that's how I perceived it. That's how I received the information. If I acted out, girls at that time weren't really allowed to show any anger. It was not a proper thing for a girl to be angry. So it was like, I didn't really know what to do. I wasn't supposed to be sad. I wasn't supposed to be angry. I was supposed to be grateful, which I was, but it was this melting pot of confusion
Yeah, it's like don't actually have your emotions or your experience that you're having. Just be grateful and happy because you're here with, in this beautiful house at this private school now. Like, you're welcome.
Exactly, which is true. That is true. But it was very confusing because there wasn't space
Yeah,
for like
I
what I
mean,
was actually feeling.
totally. And you did just go through a huge trauma experience, like losing a parent at that age. And actually, you lost two of them in two different ways. And so you're not just going to like slap on your happy face because you're living in some nice house.
No, but it felt like I was supposed to.
Yeah.
So I felt really encouraged to be like the good girl, the nice girl, very polite. So also my nervous system, I was like freeze mode and then fawn mode. How can I make sure everybody's happy because I feel very threatened, and if I threaten this situation, who knows what the situation is going to be like.
Right.
And there's all these stories that we watch on TV about being in foster care, being in orphanage, these horror stories, and I always felt like that was the next step for me if I wasn't accepted in this environment.
Right.
And so essentially what that meant is bifurcating any kind of emotional center that I have. I completely cut myself off from feeling and thought that the goal was to be as low maintenance as possible. And I feel like a lot of women can really relate to that.
Oh,
And even the terms, high maintenance, it's a put down. Don't be high maintenance.
it's a negative thing for sure. Yeah. She's high maintenance.
Right.
Like,
And it took me a long time to realize, well, every relationship's maintenance.
yeah.
And then we're all like fluctuating within the level. Like sometimes I'm going to be really high maintenance. I'm going to require a lot. And sometimes I'm going to be super laid back and I'm going to be able to be there for you. It took a long time for me to accept that there's this spectrum that I can exist on all the time. But it wasn't until I started doing shadow work, which is accepting the fact that I can be high maintenance, that I started to open up space for it to exist in my life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I found myself in relationships where I wasn't sharing what my needs were because I didn't want to be needy, high maintenance. I wasn't telling them how I felt about anything. I was not self-advocating. I was trying not to be selfish because then that would be high maintenance. It was just this terror of being perceived as high maintenance. So I was completely abandoning myself over and over and over again to try not to be high maintenance. And as you know, I'm sure that does not really pan out very well for intimate relationships.
Yeah. Or even the relationship with yourself. It's just
Oh,
the constant negative self-talk that you're saying to make yourself not come off as high maintenance. And it's like, but you are totally neglecting your needs. It's just, it's a lot. And we all do go through that in some form, I feel like. And I really want to touch on in this shadow work because this is something I don't really know a lot about. I've heard it, I've heard it like mentioned here and there, but I don't myself really know what it means. So will you kind of dive into that a little bit deeper? Like, how did you, number one, even like realize that you needed this shadow work? And then how did you start doing that? Because I am guessing that's kind of what brought you now to this place where this high maintenance, it's not this issue anymore that it was. And
oh
you're
no,
not,
I'm totally fine being high maintenance now.
yeah, as you should be.
But it's what you were saying earlier about like neglecting your needs. And I mean, at that time, because I had had this mindset that it was important to be low maintenance, it's not like I consciously made that decision as a child, but it was something that I inferred, right? Like I figured it out that this is going to make me acceptable. And so it just played out through my life. And the problem is not only was I neglecting my needs, I didn't even think I had needs. I completely believed that I was somebody that was low maintenance. I believed that I was somebody that was really self-reliant and independent. I was good on my own and I didn't require a lot from other people.
So
I
good
hear,
on you, right? Your badge of
yeah.
honor. Yeah.
Yeah, but as we all know, we're pack animals. That's not even something. So what that did is it left me feeling really isolated and really alone and really ashamed. So if parts of myself came out, that showed that I was high maintenance or showed that I was, and I'm doing air quotes right now for those of you that can't see, but needy, then I felt really ashamed afterwards. And so what happened is, because I am somebody who is maintenance to be in relationship with, and you're somebody who is maintenance to be in relationship with, it's the nature of being human and being in relationship with each other. Because that's the truth, but I'm trying to pretend that it's not true, and I'm working really hard, and I don't think I'm pretending, it just is my belief. It causes a lot of problems. And so for me, that meant hiding myself more and more and more, because the more I acted needy, the more shamed I would get, the more I tried to not be needy. And so it would just isolate me more and more. And this became a huge problem for me. By the time I was in my 20s, I got to a point where I was pretty much apathetic, because it was like a collision course of emotions that I didn't know how to process, because I didn't think I was supposed to be feeling them. I didn't think I was supposed to be this person. And so when we talk about shadow work, using this example of low maintenance and high maintenance, the persona would be, I'm a low maintenance person. I'm easy. I'm laid back. Hey, I'm no big deal. Calm as a cucumber.
Yeah.
And then my shadow would be high maintenance. It was this part of myself that I didn't think was allowed to exist. And so I spent a lot of time and energy, not consciously, but you end up doing that, a lot of time and energy trying to show that you aren't. So you're putting a lot of energy into showing how low maintenance you are.
Right.
And so we can do that with anything.
Yeah.
I can put, if I don't want somebody to see me as selfish, I'm going to put a lot of energy into showing people how selfless and how generous I am, to the point that I might be a martyr. And this creates problems in the relationship.
Yeah.
So for me, it's the friction point of feeling isolated, of not feeling connected, of feeling like I was, a fish looking out at the world, right? And a fishbowl looking out at the world and not participating in it, where I felt really lonely. I was cutting off my emotions. I was abandoning all these parts of myself, to the point that I felt really apathetic. And that worried me, because I wasn't sure if that meant something more dangerous, in terms of like, I don't even know if I should be living at this point. And so I started doing talk therapy, which was great, but it was just kind of revisiting a lot of the past without giving me any tools to figure out why I was feeling the way or not feeling the way that I was feeling, being now.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I came across this concept of the shadow. And I was so fascinated by the idea that there were parts of myself that I didn't know. And within that, I was putting a lot of energy in trying to be the opposite all the time. And I can see how like a murky mess that is, that we create for ourselves. And it really opened everything up. So essentially, shadow work is the unveiling of all of these different parts, and being able to see that spectrum that I was talking about earlier. Yes, I'm maintenance, and I'm okay with that. And actually, if you're in relationship with me, you want to know what it takes to maintain that relationship with me. And you're willing to do it because you love me. That was eye-opening for me to realize that.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, how many of us go through life like that? I mean, and it really is something I feel like you learn along the way, especially as women, about this, low maintenance, low drama girl, right? That we all feel like we're supposed to be, or we feel like that's what our parents want or our partner wants, right? Like,
Yep.
that's what
Don't be crazy.
wants.
Don't be needy. Don't be clingy. Don't be this. And so
Yeah.
we put all this effort into being the opposite.
Yeah.
And then we feel a lot of shame when those parts come up, because sometimes we are a little crazy, and so are dudes. Like, it's not gender specific, or whoever, whatever your identity is, but it's like everybody has shadows. Sometimes we are high maintenance, sometimes we are. And so I think shadow work for me is like, you can be all of these things.
Yeah.
And so it's piece by piece, taking a look at the parts of yourself that you think are not acceptable, and putting them on the table and saying, really? Is that true? Where did I adopt that from? And what you start to realize is how influenced you are by other people's shadows,
Mm-hmm.
because those shadows that are put on us, the ones that we adopt from our families, from our society, from our peers, all of that, it's just adopting it from their own things that they're trying to run from. And once you start to see this, it's like, oh, I can just show up in all these different ways, and I don't have to feel shame about it because I'm okay with it. And if somebody comes to me and gives me pushback on one of these parts of myself, I'm aware that I just triggered a shadow in them, and that's their work to do, not mine.
That's so good. Yeah, because I was just going to ask, like, how do you identify your shadows? Like, is there a method or a practice? What is, if I wanted to figure out what mine were, what would be my first step?
There's a lot of different ways to do this. I've been doing shadow work for almost 20 years now, and I've come up with a methodology. So I teach this online program called Shadow Alchemy. So it's basically teaching people the process of uncovering shadow and then figuring out how to process it. Because you can, I can tell you what I call shadow clues, which is pointing to them. But if you learn this part of yourself, it's a part that you don't like, most likely.
Yeah.
And so then what do you do with it then? Do you just sit in the misery of it? So it's the process of starting to figure out how to build a relationship with it so that you can accept and then integrate it. So I'll give you one of the shadow clues, which to me is the easiest one to pick out. And what you can do with it is, at first you're going to start hearing it in everybody else around you. And I'm going to warn you, they don't want to know. It is not your job to point it out in them. You're only doing it so that you can start to hear it in yourself, because it's easier to hear it in other people first.
Okay.
But it's something that I call distancing and nearing language. So using terms that are absolute, like I always or I never. So I'm always low maintenance. I'm always the type of person that I'm just always laid back. I'm always like this. I would never demand something from one of my partners like that. So what is it that you're trying to tell people that you're not? And what is it that you're trying to tell people that you are?
Yeah.
Because the truth is, you're on the spectrum always of whatever it is. You're on the spectrum of selfishness and selflessness. You're on the spectrum of high maintenance and low maintenance all the time.
Right.
In everything. So starting to hear like that in other people, when people are talking to you and they say, I'm always this. It's like, that's not to judge them, but it's just to be like, oh, I'm curious. What is it that they're trying to tell me that they are? And in that, what are they trying to distance their self from being seen as?
Right. That is really good.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
have a big list of them, but that's one of them that's a really interesting one to kind of take forward over the next week and just start to hear it at other people. And then you can start to pick up on you when you're saying it. And sometimes it's not like 100% that there's shadow and persona in there, but it's a good place to start to look.
Yeah, that's really good. And what would you say now, you've been doing this for 20 years plus, what have been the biggest benefits for you in your life and just
Oh my
everything?
gosh. So many. This to me, I've done a lot of self-development stuff. I've done a lot of programs and workshops, and I really was in my 30s. I was just such a seeker of all of this stuff. And the shadow to me was at the center point of all of it. The way that I saw it was all of this self-development work, you can do it, but if you're not looking at these parts of yourself, if you're not willing to see the thing that you don't know about who you are, then a lot of it's for naught, because that's what's going to take you to the next level of your self-awareness and how you express yourself with people. So to answer your question about benefits, for me, it really is more of a lightness of being, because I'm not spending time, I don't spin after having some sort of engagement with somebody. I am very present for people when they're telling me stuff about themselves or showing up in a certain way, and very aware of, is that something that I'm comfortable with or not comfortable with? Because before I did shadow work, if somebody came to me with a lot of emotion, I didn't know how to be with their emotion because I wasn't able to be with my own emotion.
Right.
So I'm much more present with the people in my life. I feel more comfortable in my own skin. There's a lightness of being. I can laugh at myself much easier when a shadow does come up for me, because we all have hundreds of them.
Yeah.
When something comes up for me now, I don't take it and use it as a mechanism of abuse against myself. I take it as like, okay, there's something in here to look at. And because I've been doing this for so long, I know for sure that there are two things that are going to come out of shadow work. One of them is I can rest assured that everybody has shadows too, and I'm not the only one. I know that for a fact. And the other one is there is value in this part of myself. I just don't know what it is yet. Carl Jung called this the shadow gold. So there's something that this shadow is going to offer me, but because I've spent so much time hating or not wanting to be this part of myself, I don't know it yet. So I can rest assured that those two things exist. So when I find that part of myself, I'm not, like I said, using it as a mechanism of abuse, but using it as an opportunity to uncover a layer that is going to make me more me.
Yeah, I love that. And who doesn't want to be more themselves and more at peace with themselves and comfortable with themselves, and it's very, very interesting. Um, so what would, if someone is coming to you, like what are like typical clients of yours, or like what do people come to you seeking? Is it to figure out what their shadows are and then process through them, or what is it?
People come to me for different levels. I have people that come to me that are burnt out, or people that are come to me and have breakdown in communications, or feel really isolated. Uh, I get a lot of people, specifically women, who are fiercely independent and have been successful in their life in different areas, but feel very isolated and on their own, and want to figure out how to feel more connected to other people and not so like they're in the world by themselves.
Yeah.
And shadow work really can make you feel like you're a part of a community, even if you don't have a specific community. But what I've done, and a lot of shadow workers haven't done, this is kind of something that I started to blend together. I was teaching yoga and I was doing shadow work, and I was treating them as very separate things when I first started doing this. And what I came to realize is, and this is how I do my work now, is yoga is another tool for shadow exploration. It's an opportunity to see how we've cut off our parts of ourselves in terms of our felt sense. When I was a kid, I was told a lot that what I was feeling wasn't true or wasn't right. So essentially, there was a level of gaslighting for that. So what
Yeah.
that did is it caused me to not trust my gut and not trust my feeling or my sense. So I grew up as a young adult always seeking advice from other people because I didn't trust my own instincts. And
Yeah.
so yoga helped put me back in my body and determine my feelings, my felt sense, so that I could get more in tune with what those are. So it allowed me to have emotion again, it allowed me to be able to identify my instinct again. And then with the shadow work, it's really, okay, what are the stories that I'm telling about myself, about who I am? And so when people come to me, sometimes they come to me by just starting with yoga, my online community. I have live stream yoga classes and a video library of yoga classes. And then people come to me for one-on-one coaching. And the Shadow Alchemy program, what it does is it puts it all together. So you're doing yoga and understanding the theory and the process of shadow exploration as one.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. I love yoga, so I can only imagine how even just like therapeutic that can be for people, being able to put them both together like that. So,
Well, and so essentially, you've been kind of doing shadow work by doing yoga. And so, what this is it's pointing you in the direction of like, you've been doing it, you just don't know you've been doing it. And
right.
so, this is showing you how you've been doing it. And I have a lot of yoga teachers and therapists actually that I work with that come to me for both of these. And I can't tell you how many yoga teachers have been like, God, I didn't even, yoga was such a big thing in my life. And now there's a whole level of it that you just brought to me that I wasn't even aware of. And that is wonderful.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Catherine. Can you please let all of our listeners know where they can find you and connect with you and reach out if they feel called to do so?
Sure, thank you. All of my work is online, so I'm at liminalspace.net. That's liminalspace.net. And so I have live stream yoga classes. I have a video library of classes. My Shadow Alchemy program is online. I do my one-on-one coaching online. And like I said, the Shadow Alchemy program encompasses all of it. So it includes the one-on-one coaching, the group work, and yoga, or people can come and just drop into a yoga class and check it out. If they go to my website right now and you sign up for my newsletter, you'll be sent a pre-recorded video of one of my Shadow Alchemy yoga classes. So they'll be able to see and take the class and check it out so they can see what it's like.
That's awesome. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much. And thank you all for listening. Please reach out to Catherine and we will chat with everybody next time.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you.